Welcome, everyone, to the HeroX Innovation Leadership Speaker Series. I'm Jamie Elliott. I'm joined today by Robert Nason from McGill University. Robert, thank you so much for joining us. It's really great to have you here. Please tell us about yourself and maybe about your innovation journey.
Sure. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm an associate professor at Desautels, Faculty of Management at McGill University. And in that, I basically research entrepreneurship, and I think a lot about teaching entrepreneurship. I do it myself and oversee some of our entrepreneurship curriculum as the director of innovation and entrepreneurship at Desautels. And kind of my passion there is understanding the diverse manifestations of entrepreneurship, the many different ways that innovation and new organizations come to life and the way they look, because I think there's many differences. And I try to think about how to teach that and think more responsibly and productively about entrepreneurship, broadly speaking.
Very interesting. I'm excited to dive into that a bit more about the manifestation portion of it, how one teaches those things. How would you say McGill and yourself do innovation differently?
Yeah. Well, I think at McGill, I mean, we're privileged to be kind of a world-class university that has a lot of cool things going on. So I think we have, amazing scientists who are creating, breakthroughs in their labs and this kind of fundamental science that leads to new insights. We have, artists that are trained in music and being, cultural leaders in their fields. We have the School of Law, we have medicine. All of these kind of creates a rich environment that what we believe is the kind of potential for innovation to come to life is the diffusion and bringing these together. That it's through that interdisciplinarity that these kind of new collisions arrive and bring people together from different perspectives, sparks new ideas, and also builds complementary teams. And both of those, I think, are important to both kind of creating the innovation, but then also bringing it to market or bringing it to have an impact in the world. And so what we've been thinking about really recently is how to be more intentional about that, to create spaces for that to happen, to create, classes and courses and series of courses that kind of bring together all those different perspectives and to create both kind of curriculum as well as a range of extracurricular activities, your kind of accelerators and labs and others that can be places for students to kind of hit the ground running or go out and get the resources they need to make the impact that they want to see in the world.
That's so cool. Yeah, I see a similar effect on the HeroX platform because we have, a global community, almost 400,000 active users. I think at least a third have either a .edu email address or have identified in their profile that they identify with a university, that they are somehow affiliated with the university.
Yeah. I mean, I think universities are such a important place and space of exploration, right? Of, both in terms of the fundamental science, but also, a next generation of young people with bright ideas and a lot of energy and ambition to go out and make change in the world. And I think it's a place where you want to harness that and take it and channel it and just like do what we can to encourage people to go on their way and to go out and live that out. And so I think universities, sometimes, recently have gotten flack for being in their ivory tower, and sometimes we haven't done our best about engaging. But I think at its best is places of exploration that are really, there's a ton of entrepreneurial innovative potential within it.
Right, right. So what do you have going on right now? Are there any programs, projects you can tell us about?
Sure. So, I mean, I think of my work in two phases. One would be kind of my own research and like studying entrepreneurship. So maybe I can start there. In that world, what I would say, I started studying some of your more traditional startups and that kind of thing, but I've grown into, there's a lot of research that's concentrated in that domain. And I think we have a kind of dominant model of what entrepreneurship is and tends to be your kind of, you know, VC backed tech venture, that starts and grows. And those do a lot of good in the world, but there's also a lot of attention and some bad, So I think there's some of both. We need the critical lens to it. But what I've been interested on the research side, and this, seeps into the teaching as well, is that more broader spectrum of what entrepreneurship is. And so, I started looking at entrepreneurship in family firms. So family-owned businesses, which are really one of the dominant forms of organization worldwide, how they pass not just a business operations from one generation to the next, but really that entrepreneurial mindset and capabilities to future generations who might start their own thing or build on the family legacy or assets in some way to do something else. And then more recently, I've been looking at entrepreneurship in context of poverty and informality. So kind of the opposite end of the wealth hierarchy. And in this, again, I like to say most of the rich are entrepreneurs, something like 75% of the top 1% own and actively manage a privately held business. I mean, it's hard to get super rich without owning equity in something, I think is kind of part of the story there. But most entrepreneurs are poor. The highest levels of entrepreneurial activity in countries around the world are in some of your lowest income countries. So those are the kind of things that I've been studying. I think it's important to capture that as part of a phenomenon of understanding what entrepreneurship is. But there often the motivations are different. The challenges they deal with are different. The institutional environments that they're embedded in are very different. And so I think it's important to respect and legitimize that entrepreneurial activity and also to understand it a bit on its own terms. So right now I have projects. For a while, I've been studying entrepreneurs in the townships of Cape Town, South Africa. I've studied entrepreneurs in Indian slum households in Hyderabad, in coffee farmers in Colombia, market queens in Ghana, all of these working with co-authors, often who have gone out and done some intensive data collection, and I've done some myself as well, or with like NGO partners who have a long history and connections in those regions. But this is all as part of this attempt to kind of understand the ways that entrepreneurship manifests and operates within unique environments.
It's interesting because you work across such a spectrum. What do you see as the similarities? Where do you see these things
Yeah.
overlapping when you have such completely different environments, but entrepreneurial spirit and that drive persists through all of them? Are there similarities that you see?
Yeah. Yeah, I point to a few. I mean, one is, the role of family and those that are kind of closest to you, your social networks. As I said, family businesses are in terms of, small, medium enterprise populations are often the backbones of economies around the world. But in the kind of poor and informal context too, they're often some of the only or few resources that individuals have to draw on. So whether it's formally kind of delineated in terms of roles or not, you often have the family members who are helping out. If someone gets sick, they'll come fill in for the entrepreneur and man the counter that day, or someone will come in and make sure they help pick up the inventory and or deliveries and this kind of thing. So the role of family is certainly something that's universal across that. The other, I think what's become the dominant approach to undertaking entrepreneurship, even in your kind of Silicon Valley model, is this kind of, fail fast, create MVPs, prototype, learn from the customer before you scale it and release it to the world. This is something that, in context of poverty and informality, they've been doing, they do kind of naturally or intuitively. So, and sometimes by necessity. So you have, minimum viable product by necessity. You have to work with the few things you have. So you're doing bricolage, you're using things for reasons that they weren't intended because you're making do with the resources you have. And so I think that even the kind of process or method of entrepreneurship, there's some real similarities there as well.
That's so interesting because books like Running Lean by Ash Maurya, right? It's these concepts of customer discovery and iterating and that minimal viable product to get something in front of someone. When you read a book like this, is in some ways a luxury because you have other ways to go about it. And you
Yeah,
don't
good
think
point.
about businesses that then thrive because that's how they had to do it. And that was the minimal viable way to get this done.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So I'm curious about at McGill, because entrepreneurship is so diverse,
Yeah.
as you've illustrated, what are the core pieces and elements that you all teach there at McGill? Like, how do you teach entrepreneurship at McGill?
Yeah. So I think there are some common I think attitudes around entrepreneurship and methods to entrepreneurship. But there's a need for, depending on the path you want to go, a contextualization as well. And so we approach that a couple ways. One, we have courses that are more kind of broadly defined meant to be cross-cutting. that instill things like the entrepreneurial mindset. Like, what does it mean to, have a mindset of viewing opportunity in the world? And this to us is something that we're trying to do more and more of, spreading across the university to other faculties, especially, non-business school students who might not be exposed to it. So to just trigger some kind of, put something in their mind that, what, maybe I don't have to just think about getting a job out of this or some, the skills that's going to get someone to hire me. But, maybe I think more broadly about what's the opportunity here? What could I undertake? Whether you get a job or not, I think working for big companies, there's also entrepreneurs who are the ones that are raising their hand to, lead the new initiative or set up the new office somewhere. This entrepreneurial mindset and skills, I think, are useful across the board. So one is mindset. I think that's something that there's a kind of general way of thinking. Some of the skills and approaches, I think, are also, can be applied across contexts. So we have incorporated more and more around design thinking into much of our curriculum, which is really, a process that follows some of those principles we've been talking about, but being, starting with empathy with the customer or your end user, whoever that end user or beneficiary may be, and iterating and designing along the way and getting feedback before you kind of grow from there. So that's one. That's the second one. The third I would say is we have a kind of a kind of a portfolio, a landscape of extracurricular activities and labs that are situated within the respective faculty. So in the engineering school, they have Engine, which is their kind of entrepreneurial lab. We have Dobson in the business school, which does service the university, but they have dedicated tracks as well for a kind of more social ventures, more tech-oriented ventures, more ventures of one flavor or another, healthcare, for instance. And so we have that even in our neuroscience faculties, they have Neurosphere, which is their kind of innovation lab. We have a CLIP, which is the healthcare and medtech kind of lab. So I think sometimes these can seem kind of fragmented and overlapping, but I think they also bring this contextual element that helps students to take that kind of mindset and then translate it into their more specific domain as they build out and grow their ventures.
There's such an energy that comes with entrepreneurship and startups. We found that we have this open call for startups that's constantly running on HeroX to find startups and help connect them and help showcase what they're working on. And I think half of our users on the platform are affiliated with a startup in some way. And we certainly have some startup geared challenges on the platform, which is really cool. So
Yeah.
any projects or impacts, any big things stand out for you in the past couple of years that have just been, kind of mind blowing for you?
Let's see. I think in terms of impacts and things, I think we've had certainly our fair share of, success stories. So I think within the Dobson, they keep tally of the cumulative amount of fundraising that's been raised by the McGill startups, and we're over 4 billion or something now. So, there's been some very great success stories. I think the unpacking kind of how those come about, some of them I think are really powerful because they show the when we do it well, how we build complementaries across the university. So we have examples of that phenomenal company called Carbicrete. What they make is carbon negative concrete blocks. You know, concrete and cement in particular is one of the major contributors to greenhouse gases, something like 8%. Just everything it does in that. What they did is in a engineering lab at McGill, there was a faculty and postdoc working together. They found a way to use steel slag as an alternative binding agent for concrete blocks. So instead of the cement as the binding agent, they melted down the steel slag, which is basically a waste product from the steel production. And then what they did is they cured these blocks with CO2. So that's why it's carbon negative, because it's trapping carbon, this CO2 within the blocks as they cure it. And I think a super cool kind of innovation that's both, there's a huge market and demand for it, it's sustainable and does good for the environment. It came about, ultimately, as happens in universities, and I get this, I'm a faculty member, the faculty member running the lab he wasn't going to quit his job to start this company, but they found this super cool thing. And one of the postdocs who was working in the lab was like, well, maybe I should try this out. So he started trying it out. He got teamed up with a business school alum who knew people in the tech transfer office that came in and had been involved in startups previously. So you had this match between the kind of technical expertise and the business commercialization mind. They hooked up and have started growing like crazy from there. And I think it speaks to the it takes work and effort, and sometimes these happen a little bit by chance or really serendipity. But I think what we can think more about is how do we architecture that? How do we, build for serendipity,
Yeah.
design for it,
Right.
and allowing those kind of things to happen. And I think that to me is a great, case that we use that they've been I've used them as a kind of live projects in our some of our MBA classes, and I think it speaks to also how the kind of good you can do in the world through innovation and entrepreneurship as well.
Absolutely. It's right. You're equipping them for when those serendipitous moments come about, right? So that
Yeah,
if that opportunity arises, you can spring on it because you have the tools, you have the experience to know what to do to seize that opportunity.
yeah, and that you've also been you're put in that mindset of like that this is something that I can do, that maybe I should be a little more alert and look for those opportunities and take advantage of those and so seize on them when they come up. Yeah.
Very cool. So you're in an interesting position because I think you could probably speak to students that are maybe heading into a more entrepreneurial field of study, as well as faculty who may be teaching similar to you.
Yeah.
Any advice you would give to either or both that are trying to do what you're doing, trying to do what your students are doing?
Yeah. I mean, I think that in the university setting, I mean, I think we my advice is, for students, especially, let's say while you're in this, it's a great time and space to explore. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of pressure on students these days that like, I got to find what I do in my specialty. And like, I got to like, make sure I take all the right courses so I can get a good job when I graduate, and that pressure sometimes from themselves, from family, from, the nature of the competitive environment out there. And that's true. And I don't want to discount it, but also like, it's a very unique and important place where you can explore and like take that weird class that you're not going to be able to take later because you don't know what kind of idea it's going to spark. And like, do this extracurricular case competition team or some other group project where you're going to meet people that you're not sitting next to in class or aren't part of your major, so that you break outside of some of those, your dominant ways of seeing things. I think life has ways of channeling us in our profession and everything else that we kind of stay in these lanes, and the more we can kind of make efforts to break out of it. So I think university is a great time to do that for students. And also, and I think what we try to think about also in what we're creating is that trying to create an environment where it's okay to explore and it's relatively, the risks of failure are relatively low. Because you get, failure is a part of the entrepreneurial process. Like there's no doubt about it. We know that that's the case. So reducing the cost of failure is important. And for us, trying to create environments where it's okay to fail, where you can maximize the learning from failure, I think are all important pieces of it. For faculty, I would say, I mean, same. It's same in terms of get outside it and spark and get new ideas. I think they have the Nobel Prizes released recently, and reading some interviews and stuff with them, they often are people coming from different disciplines like that are mashing up to kind of create new insights. It's not always just going narrower and deeper, but finding these connections across that kind of unleashes a new way of doing things. So I think that's important. And then the other for faculty, as you're looking at innovative potential within your students, is, what you can do is be an enabler. I think it's sometimes with faculty, we get protective about our ideas or IP or whatever else, and you can constrain innovation as well. So, think about it like the faculty of that engineering lab, he enabled and encouraged the postdoc to to go out and try something else rather than saying, no, 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 you need to stay on the research track or you're not going to be part of my lab or something else that faculty could say, right? So I think seeing yourself as the kind of role you have to be able to encourage and develop that next generation, not just in terms of what you think they should do or what you think the world needs, but encouraging them to be able to create the change that they want to see in the world and that to enable that.
Really great, powerful, powerful stuff. How can listeners find out more or get involved?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, you're welcome to anyone, happy to look me up on the McGill website, drop me an email if you have questions or want to talk more. I think, look out for us. We're trying to create new things, working on new programs that kind of bring together these kind of ideas and incorporate them and kind of bold new approaches to entrepreneurship and innovation pedagogy. So be on the lookout, and I hope to see some cool stuff coming out of McGill.
Awesome. Awesome. This has been great. Robert, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no,
Really appreciate it and very excited to see what the future holds for you guys.
thanks so much. Thanks for having me.